Cal Johansson had been fixing porches along the North Shore for 22 years. He told me afterward he had crawled beneath dozens of Victorian foundations and never once heard anything like it. Not the wind. Not a raccoon scratching through insulation. Not pipes contracting in the February cold. A sound, rhythmic, deliberate, coming from somewhere beneath the brownstone where no sound should exist. He had arrived at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning to replace the railing on my front porch. The ice that winter had been brutal. 43 days below zero. In January alone, the freeze-thaw cycle had cracked 2 balusters and split the top rail clean through. I hired Cal because he understood old homes. He did not rush. He measured. He respected the grain. By 9:40, he had removed the damaged section and was checking the joist connections underneath. That required him to slide beneath the porch deck on his back with a trouble light and a pry bar. Standard procedure for a house built in 1887. You check what holds the surface before you rebuild what sits on top. He told me he was approximately 4 feet under the deck when he saw it. 4 fingers. Small, pale, wrapped around the copper heating pipe that ran beneath the porch floor. Not frozen, not blue, warm. The knuckles were white from gripping, but the skin was pink, alive. Cal did not move. He said he held his breath for what felt like a full minute. The fingers did not release the pipe. They adjusted, shifted slightly. Then the smallest hand he had ever seen on a job site did something that made him slide backwards so fast he tore his jacket on a floor joist. The hand released the copper. One finger extended. Index. And it began to trace letters in the condensation that had formed on the cold metal surface of the pipe. H-E-L-P. 4 letters. Backward. Written in reverse, so that someone looking down from above would read them forward. Mirror script. Deliberate. Practiced. As though whoever wrote them had been waiting a very long time for someone to be close enough to read. Cal scrambled out from under the porch. His hands were shaking. He told me later he thought he was hallucinating. 22 years in construction. Crawl spaces and basements and foundations in every condition. Never once a human hand where no human should be. He called me from the driveway. I was in the kitchen making coffee. The phone rang at 9:51. I remember the time because I was watching the clock on the stove thinking about a doctor's appointment at 10:30. Mr. Lindquist. His voice was wrong. Flat. Controlled in the way a man sounds when he is trying very hard not to panic. Mr. Lindquist, there is something under your porch. Something, and it is writing to me. I walked to the front door. Opened it. The February air hit me at 11 below. Cal was standing at the bottom of the porch steps. His face was gray. His pry bar was on the ground where he had dropped it. He pointed beneath the deck without speaking. I am 74 years old. I spent 42 years mapping terrain that most people will never walk. I have drawn fault lines and elevation changes and the boundaries of places that do not appear on any commercial map. I have measured things that cannot be seen with the naked eye. But nothing in those 42 years prepared me for what I did next. I knelt on the porch deck, pressed my face to the gap between the boards where Cal had removed the damaged section, looked down into the dark space beneath my own home. I saw nothing at first, just the heating pipes, the brownstone foundation wall, insulation panels. The trouble light Cal had left was still on, casting a yellow wash across the crawl space. Then I saw the condensation on the copper pipe. Fresh, disturbed. 4 letters still barely visible in the moisture. H-E-L-P, and below the letters, a smudge, where a hand had pulled away. I stayed there for perhaps 10 seconds, maybe 15. Long enough to feel the warmth rising through the gap. Warmth that should not exist in a crawl space. In February in Duluth, Minnesota, long enough to hear something. Breathing. Shallow. Quick. The breathing of someone small. Someone who had heard my knees hit the boards above and recognized the sound of weight, of presence, of danger. Whoever was beneath my porch had heard my footsteps, and they had learned to hide. I pulled back from the gap, stood, looked at Cal. He looked at me. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. The wind came off Lake Superior, carrying ice crystals that stung my face and reminded me that the world was real and solid and governed by things I understood: coordinates, temperature, distance, weight. But the 4 letters on that pipe did not belong to any coordinate system I had ever mapped. I told Cal to go home. I told him I would handle it. He did not argue. He packed his tools in silence and drove away in his white truck, and I watched the exhaust disappear down the hill toward the lake. Then I went back inside, locked the door, sat at the kitchen table with my coffee growing cold and my hands gripping the edge of the wood until my knuckles matched the whiteness of those 4 small fingers. Someone was living beneath my home. Someone small enough to grip a heating pipe with one hand. Someone who wrote in mirror script, backward letters meant to be read from above. I had taught only one person in my life to write in mirror script. A game we played on Sunday mornings. A cartographer's trick. Our secret. My granddaughter Elsa, who was supposed to be at a music academy in Michigan, 400 miles south of here. I did not call the police. Not yet. Because a compass does not spin without reason. And before I tore this house apart, I needed to know which direction the needle was pointing. I needed to know who put a child beneath my porch. And I needed to be certain that when I opened that space, I would not be too late. Whoever was beneath my porch had heard my footsteps, and they had learned to hide. I have lived in Duluth, Minnesota for 40 years. Moved here in 1984 with a woman who loved the cold and a career that required me to understand the shape of the earth in ways most people never consider. My name is Arthur Lindquist. Most people call me Art. I am 74 years old, and I have spent 42 of those years drawing lines on paper that told other people where they stood. United States Geological Survey. Cartographer. Field Mapping Division. 1982 to 2023. 41 years of walking terrain that had no trails, no markers, no existing reference points. Northern Minnesota. The Boundary Waters Canoe Area. The Iron Range from Eveleth to Babbitt. The North Shore from 2 harbors, all the way to Grand Portage at the Canadian border. I carried a Brunton Pocket Transit, a Silva Ranger compass, a steel measuring tape, and notebooks that I filled with elevation readings, contour intervals, magnetic declinations, and benchmark coordinates that eventually became the maps used by hikers, engineers, timber companies, and emergency responders to navigate terrain they could not see from any road. It was precise work, patient work, the kind that punishes assumption and rewards verification. You carry a compass. You take a bearing. You shoot an azimuth to a known landmark and triangulate your position against 2 others before you mark a single point on paper. You trust the instrument over your intuition, because intuition is a story the brain tells itself, and a compass is physics. The needle points north because the magnetic field of the earth tells it to, not because it wants to, not because it feels like it. Because north is north. That principle governed everything I did for 4 decades. Measure twice. Verify against a known datum. Record only what you can confirm. Do not guess. Do not assume the terrain matches what you expect from the last survey. Walk it. Map it. Triangulate it. Confirm it with your own eyes and your own instruments. And then confirm it again. I should have applied that principle to my own family. I did not. That failure cost my granddaughter 1,091 days in darkness. The house sits on a hillside in the East End neighborhood of Duluth, 3 blocks above Lake Superior. Built in 1887 by a Norwegian shipping merchant named Carl Gustafsson, who wanted to watch his ore boats come and go through the harbor canal. Victorian architecture. 3 full stories plus an attic. Native brownstone foundation quarried from the same glacial ridge the house sits upon. Wraparound porch on the east and north faces. 16-foot ceilings on the main floor. Leaded glass transoms above every interior door. A home built for permanence in a climate that tests every structure to its absolute limit. 50 below wind chill in January, 70 above in July. Freeze-thaw cycles that crack concrete like eggshell. Lake effect snow that buries a porch railing overnight. Ingrid and I bought it in October 1984 for $112,000. It needed everything. The roof leaked in 9 places. The knob and tube wiring was a fire waiting to happen. The galvanized plumbing had corroded to half diameter. No insulation anywhere except newspaper, stuffed between studs in 1920-something. The foundation itself was solid brownstone, does not rot and does not heave under frost the way poured concrete does. But everything built above that stone had suffered from 30 years of deferred maintenance by an elderly widow who could not afford repairs. We restored it over 4 years. 84 to 88. Every weekend. Every vacation day. Every dollar we did not spend elsewhere. I rebuilt the wraparound porch railings myself using clear western red cedar from a mill in Cloquet. Ingrid stripped 14 layers of paint from the interior window trim with a heat gun and a scraper and found the original old-growth white pine beneath, tight-grained and golden. We replaced all the wiring, replumbed the entire structure with copper. I insulated the crawl spaces myself in 1989 fiberglass bats with 6mm polyethylene vapor barrier stapled to the joists because I understood the geometry of that foundation better than any insulation contractor in the city. The crawl space beneath the front porch measured approximately 11 feet east to west by 14 feet north to south. Ceiling height varied from 3 feet at the outer brownstone wall to 4 feet 8 inches where the crawl space met the main basement foundation. I installed every bat myself on a Saturday in October of '89. I remember the date because Ingrid was 7 months pregnant with Eric, and she came down twice with hot chocolate and told me to finish by 4 o'clock because the Minnesota Vikings were playing the Green Bay Packers at 4:30, and she wanted me showered and on the couch beside her with the television on. I knew that crawl space, the way I knew my own survey notes. Every dimension, every pipe run, every junction box and vapor barrier seam. I knew where the copper heating lines turned 90 degrees at the foundation corner. I knew where the brownstone showed frost crystals in deep January cold. I knew where I had patched the vapor barrier in '96 after a raccoon tore a 2-foot hole near the north vent. Or I believed I knew it. 40 years in that house. 40 years walking above that foundation every single morning. Making coffee in the kitchen. Directly above the main crawl space. Sitting on the porch in summer, watching Lake Superior turn from black to steel blue as the sun rose over the Wisconsin shore. 40 years of my footsteps pressing down on floorboards that covered a space I never thought to re-examine, because I had mapped it once and filed it away as known terrain. A cartographer's greatest professional failure is not drawing the wrong contour line. It is leaving a space blank on the map because he assumed nothing occupied it. The medieval mapmakers wrote, "Here be dragons, at the edges of the known world." They at least had the humility to admit uncertainty. I did not even have the imagination to wonder what might live at the edge of mine. Beneath my porch was darkness. 4 feet of vertical space between frozen ground and cedar deck boards. Pipes and brownstone, and fiberglass and silence. And beneath that silence, for 1,091 days, my granddaughter Elsa breathed, and drew maps on the walls with colored pencils, and waited for someone above to finally measure what could not be seen. I knew every square inch of that foundation, or I believed I did. Ingrid Margrethe Lindquist taught 3rd grade at Lakewood Elementary for 38 years. She started in 1983, 1 year before we moved into the house, and she retired in 2021 when her hands began shaking too much to write on the whiteboard with the steady cursive her students expected. 340 children passed through her classroom over those decades. She remembered every single name. I am not exaggerating. You could mention a student from 1994, and she would tell you their middle name, their favorite book, and whether they preferred chocolate or vanilla milk at lunch. She was the kind of teacher who noticed things. The boy whose coat was too thin for November. The girl who flinched when adults raised their voices. The child who never had lunch money, but was too proud to say so. Ingrid noticed, and she acted without making a sound about it. Coats appeared in lost and found bins in exactly the right size. Lunch accounts were quietly credited. Permission slips were signed by Ingrid herself when parents could not be reached. She mapped kindness the way I mapped terrain. Methodically, thoroughly, without expecting anyone to notice the work. We raised one son. Eric Arthur Lindquist. Born February 1985 in that house on the hill with a snowstorm howling outside and the midwife driving through 6-inch drifts to arrive 20 minutes before his head crowned. Eric grew up quiet and steady. He became a logistics manager for a medical device company in Minneapolis. Organized. Dependable. The kind of man who always answered his phone. The kind of man who trusted the people closest to him, because his mother had taught him that trust was the default position of a decent life. That trust nearly destroyed his daughter. Ingrid began saving for Elsa the month she was born. March 2015. She opened a trust account at Wells Fargo and funded it every month for 8 years without missing a single deposit. Teacher's salary is not extravagant. But Ingrid had been saving since 1983. 40 years of modest living. Careful investment. No debt beyond our mortgage, which we paid off in 2004. By the time Elsa turned 8, the trust held $2,500,000. $2.5 million. Ingrid's entire life measured in deposits of $400, $600, sometimes $1,000 when her summer tutoring checks came in. Compound interest did the rest. 40 years of patience. The trust was for Elsa's education. For her future. For whatever path she chose to walk. Ingrid wrote the terms herself, with a lawyer in Canal Park. The money could not be accessed until Elsa turned 18, unless a designated guardian authorized educational expenses. And Eric's power of attorney, in the event of his incapacity or absence, transferred to his spouse. To Tamara. But I am getting ahead of the map. Let me stay with Ingrid a moment longer, because everything that happened beneath my porch connects back to the woman who built the foundation of this family, the same way Gustafson built the foundation of this house. With patience. With stone. With the belief that what you build properly will outlast you. Ingrid loved Sundays. Every Sunday morning she and Elsa would sit at the kitchen table with a large sheet of butcher paper and colored pencils. Ingrid would say, "Pick a place. Any place. Real or imagined." And Elsa would choose. The backyard. The moon. Grandmother's closet. The bottom of Lake Superior. And together they would draw a map of that place. Not an artistic rendering. A proper map. With a compass. Rose in the corner. A scale bar at the bottom. A legend explaining the symbols. North always at the top. This is how Elsa learned to think spatially. Not from me. From Ingrid. I taught her the technical skills later. Contour lines, triangulation, mirror script as a game. But the love of mapping came from those Sunday mornings with butcher paper and the smell of pancakes and her grandmother's hand guiding hers to draw a compass, rose with the N pointing straight up toward the ceiling. Ingrid used to say that phrase every Sunday. She would tap the compass rose with her pencil and look at Elsa and say, "You will always find your way home. Just follow north." Ingrid developed a cough in November 2022. We thought it was the cold air. December it worsened. January, she could not walk up the stairs without stopping twice. The doctor said pneumonia, admitted her to street. Luke's on January 14, 2023. She was in room 412. 4th floor. East-facing window. She could see the lake from her bed, and she told me every morning that the ice was forming later this year, and what did that say about the world we were leaving for Elsa? She died on January 25th. 11 days after admission. I held her hand. Eric held the other. Elsa was not there. Tamara had said the trip from Michigan would be too hard on a 9-year-old. Too much grief for a child to process. Better to remember Grandma healthy. Ingrid's last morning. She asked me to bring the compass. The vintage brass compass she had given Elsa for her 7th birthday. Engraved on the back. North Star. I brought it from Elsa's old room where it still sat on the nightstand. Ingrid held it against her chest for an hour. Then she pressed it into my hands and spoke the last complete sentence I would hear from her. Listen for her, Art. A compass does not lie. If something feels wrong, measure it. Do not assume north. Confirm it. I thought she meant grief. I thought she was telling me to stay present, to check on Elsa regularly, to not let sorrow push me into isolation. I nodded. I promised. I kissed her forehead. She closed her eyes. I did not understand what she meant until 3 years later, when I pressed my ear against the porch floor and heard my granddaughter breathing in the dark beneath my feet. Ingrid had been watching Tamara longer than any of us knew. She noticed things. She always noticed things. And her last words were not about grief. They were a warning. Ingrid left me 2 things. A compass that always pointed true, and a promise I did not keep. Elsa Ingrid Lindquist was born on the 14th of March, 2015, at St. Luke's Hospital in Duluth. 7 pounds 2 ounces, 21 inches long. She arrived at 6:17 in the morning while a late-season blizzard buried the city under 9 inches of wet snow and the lights in the delivery room flickered twice. Ingrid said later that the child came into the world during a whiteout and immediately opened her eyes as if looking for a landmark. She was not wrong. By the time Elsa was 3, she could draw a rectangle and tell you it was the living room. By 4, she was adding doorways in the correct positions. By 5, she produced a floor plan of our entire house, 3 stories, 14 rooms with proportions so accurate that I held it against my own survey sketch and found the variance to be less than 8%. She was 5 years old. She used a ruler and a red crayon. And she measured the hallway by walking it heel to toe and counting her steps. I did not teach her that. She observed. She absorbed spatial relationships, the way other children absorb song lyrics or cartoon dialogue. The world for Elsa was not a collection of objects. It was a collection of distances between objects. Relationships. Angles. Gaps. Ingrid recognized it before I did. She told me on Elsa's 5th birthday that this child thinks in maps, art. She does not see rooms. She sees the space between walls. That is your gift passed through your blood to her hands. The Sunday map sessions became Elsa's cathedral. Every week, without exception, from age 4 to age 9. Butcher paper, colored pencils, a new place to map. Elsa's maps grew more sophisticated each month. By 6, she was adding compass roses without being reminded. By 7, she included scale bars calculated against her own arm length. Her forearm measured 11 inches, and she used it as her base unit, the way Renaissance architects used the cubit. By 8, she asked me to teach her contour lines, and I spent a Saturday afternoon showing her how elevation is represented on paper. By the following Sunday, she had drawn a topographic map of our backyard that included the slope down to the alley and the depression where the oak tree roots disrupted the grade. The mirror script began as a game. I showed her Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks one Sunday, the backward writing, the reverse diagrams. She was fascinated. Why would someone write backward? Grandpa. I told her cartographers sometimes used mirror script for annotations that should not be read casually. Secret notes embedded in the map itself, visible only to someone who knew to hold the page to a mirror or read from the reverse side. She practiced every Sunday after that. By age 8, her mirror script was faster than her forward writing. She would leave me notes on the kitchen table written entirely in reverse. Good morning, Grandpa. The cat is under the porch. I found a new beetle near the fence. I would hold them up to the hallway mirror and read them and leave her a reply in the same backward script. Our private cartographer's code. I did not know that one day she would write 4 letters in that code on a copper pipe and it would be the only reason I recognized that the fingers beneath my porch belonged to my own blood. Eric married Tamara Collins in June of 2014. 9 months before Elsa was born. Tamara was 31 at the time. Eric was 29. They met through Eric's company. Tamara worked in pharmaceutical sales for a firm that supplied the same hospitals Eric's medical devices served. She was attractive, articulate, laughed easily, dressed well, remembered names and birthdays, and asked follow-up questions about things you mentioned in passing weeks earlier. Ingrid liked her at first. Everyone did. Tamara had a quality that I can only describe as attentive warmth. She focused on you when you spoke, as though nothing else in the world existed. She brought wine to dinners that cost exactly enough to seem generous without being showy. She asked about my mapping work with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. It was Ingrid who first noticed the calibration. 18 months into the marriage. We were driving home from Thanksgiving at Eric and Tamara's apartment in Minneapolis. Ingrid was quiet for 40 miles. Then she said something I did not fully understand until years later. She maps people, Art. The same way you map terrain. She identifies the features that matter, and she charts a route between them. Every compliment has a coordinate. Every question has a destination. She is calculating distance. I told Ingrid she was being ungenerous. Tamara was kind. Tamara was attentive. What was wrong with paying attention to people? Ingrid did not argue. She never did when she knew time would prove her point. She simply said, "I hope I am wrong," and she turned on the radio, and we drove the rest of the way home listening to public broadcasting and not speaking about Tamara Collins again for 6 months. Ingrid was not wrong. Ingrid was never wrong about people. She spent 38 years reading 8-year-olds, and she could identify a manipulator before they finished their first sentence. She watched Tamara for 5 years, and she kept her observations to herself because she had no evidence. Only instinct. Only the compass in her chest that told her north was not where Tamara claimed it was. And then Ingrid died. And the person who noticed things was gone. And I was left with a compass I did not check. And a granddaughter, whose absence I did not measure. How a 9-year-old girl vanished without crossing a single property line. 14 months after Ingrid's funeral, Tamara called a family meeting. That was her phrase. Family meeting. As though we were a corporation, requiring quarterly review. She drove up from Minneapolis on a Saturday in March 2024. Eric came with her. They arrived at 11 in the morning, and Tamara had a folder, printed pages, color photographs, a brochure with a forest green cover and gold lettering. Interlochen Arts Academy, Northwestern Michigan. One of the most prestigious arts boarding programs in the country. Established 1928. 500 students. Visual arts, music, theater, creative writing, dance. Rolling admission for students demonstrating exceptional talent in any discipline. Campus on a lake. Faculty with terminal degrees from Yale, RISD, Juilliard, Cranbrook. Tamara spread the materials across my kitchen table like evidence at a hearing. She had highlighted specific passages. The visual arts program, the residential life section, the tuition page $58,000 per year including room and board. She had circled a paragraph about scholarships for gifted students from the upper Midwest. Elsa has a gift, she said. She touched the brochure with one manicured finger. You know it. I know it. Her spatial intelligence is off the scale. I had her assessed by a developmental psychologist in Minneapolis last month. 99th percentile in visual spatial reasoning. Top 2% in quantitative mapping exercises. The psychologist recommended immediate placement in an advanced program. Her exact words were, "This child is being understimulated." I looked at Eric. He was nodding slowly. The way a man nods when he has already agreed, but wants his father to believe the decision is still open. She is 9 years old, I said. Tamara did not blink. She will turn 10 next month. Many Interlochen students begin at 9 or 10. They have an entire residential support team, counselors, Dorm parents. The student-to-faculty ratio is 6-1. She will receive more individual attention than any school in Duluth can provide. I said she just lost her grandmother 14 months ago. She needs stability. She needs family around her. Tamara leaned forward. That is exactly why this is right. Ingrid wanted Elsa to have every opportunity. That is why she built the trust. If Ingrid were here, she would say, measure the opportunity. Art. Do not let grief make the decision. She used Ingrid's language against me. Measure. The word sat in the air between us, and I felt it land in my chest like a hook finding bone. Tamara knew what that word meant to me. She had mapped me well enough to know which coordinates mattered. Eric spoke then. Dad, the application is already submitted. She was accepted 3 weeks ago. Full scholarship based on portfolio review. Tamara organized everything. The semester starts in September, but there is a summer intensive in June that would help her transition. 3 weeks. The application submitted without my knowledge. The acceptance received without a phone call. My granddaughter's future redirected 400 miles south to a campus I had never visited. And I learned about it over coffee at my own kitchen table, as though being briefed on a change in shipping routes. I should have said no. I should have demanded to see the acceptance letter. Should have called the school myself. Should have driven Elsa to campus personally and walked every building and met every faculty member and confirmed with my own eyes that the place was real and my granddaughter would be safe within it. I did not. I looked at Eric and saw that he trusted his wife. I looked at Tamara and saw the confidence of a woman who had prepared for every objection. I looked at the brochure and saw Ingrid's dream for Elsa, rendered in green and gold. And I heard Ingrid's phrase, measure the opportunity, weaponized so precisely that I could not argue against it without arguing against my dead wife. Tamara drove Elsa to the airport on June 6th. I hugged my granddaughter on the front porch. She was wearing a yellow backpack and holding the compass Ingrid had given her. North Star. Brass. Heavy in her small hand. She pressed it against my chest when she hugged me, and I felt the metal through my shirt like a second heartbeat. Follow north, I said. The way I always said it. She looked up at me. Her eyes were Ingrid's eyes. Gray-blue. Serious. She said, I will, Grandpa. And I will send you maps of everything I see. She walked down the porch steps. Got into Tamara's car. The door closed. The engine started. I watched the silver SUV pull away from the curb and drive down the hill toward the highway. I watched until it turned left on Superior Street and disappeared behind the row of birch trees. That was the last time I saw my granddaughter in person for 3 years. Every Sunday after that, Tamara arranged a video call. 30 minutes. Elsa on screen in what appeared to be a dormitory room. Bookshelves behind her. A window showing trees. She talked about her classes, her teachers, a friend named Maya who also liked maps. She held up drawings, report cards, smiled, laughed, told me she was happy. 156 Sundays, 156 calls. I watched my granddaughter grow on a screen, and I never once asked to visit. Never once drove to Michigan. Never once demanded to speak with a teacher or a dorm parent or anyone whose existence I could independently verify, because I trusted the screen. The way a man trusts a map someone else drew without checking it against the terrain. I watched her walk to the car. I did not watch closely enough to see she never got in. Cal Johansson left my driveway at 10:22 on that Tuesday morning. I watched his white truck disappear down the hill, and then I went back inside and sat at the kitchen table for exactly 14 minutes without moving. I know it was 14 minutes because I watched the clock on the stove the way a man watches a compass needle that has begun to spin, waiting for it to settle, waiting for north to reassert itself. It did not settle. So I stood up and went to work. 42 years with the USGS taught me that panic is the enemy of accuracy. When you are lost in terrain you do not recognize. You do not run. You stop. You pull out your compass. You identify a known landmark. You take a bearing. You proceed with deliberation. The wilderness does not reward haste. Neither does a house that may be hiding a child beneath its foundation. I went to the basement and retrieved my field kit. A canvas bag I had not opened since my retirement 14 months earlier. Inside, Brunton Pocket Transit, Silva Ranger compass, steel tape, and a handheld thermal imaging device, a FLIR C5, I had purchased in 2019 for inspecting insulation gaps during a home energy audit. It measured surface temperature at a distance and displayed the results as a color gradient. Blue for cold, yellow for warm, red for hot. I walked out to the front porch. The temperature was 11 below zero. Wind off the lake at 15 miles per hour. Wind chill, somewhere around 30 below. Every surface exposed to the air should read well below freezing on the thermal scanner. The brownstone foundation, the cedar deck boards, the copper pipes, all of it should register blue on the display. I pointed the FLIR at the deck surface and swept it slowly from east to west. Blue, 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 and then yellow. A rectangle of warmth approximately 8 feet long and 6 feet wide, positioned directly above the section of crawl space where Cal had seen the fingers. The surface temperature at the center of that rectangle read 36.5 degrees Celsius, 97.7 Fahrenheit. Body temperature. Not a heating pipe, not a furnace duct. The thermal signature of a living human being, radiating upward through 4 inches of cedar and whatever lay between. I knelt and pressed my bare palm to the deck boards in the center of that yellow rectangle. Warm. Faintly but unmistakably warm. On a day when every other surface within a mile was coated in frost, I needed to see underneath. Not from above. From the access point. The crawl space had always been entered through a hatch on the north side of the porch, a 3-foot by 3-foot plywood panel screwed into the lattice skirting. Standard access for plumbing maintenance. I walked around the house to the north side and found the hatch. It was wrong. I had installed that access panel in 1990. I used 3/4-inch exterior plywood and galvanized deck screws. 8 screws. Phillips head. I painted it the same gray-green as the lattice. The panel I was looking at now was smooth. New. The screws were Robertson head square drive, not Phillips. The paint was close but not identical. A shade lighter. Newer. Someone had replaced my access panel. Recently enough that the paint had not yet weathered to match. I did not open it. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the east side and examined the foundation ventilation grate, a cast iron register I installed in '89 to allow seasonal airflow through the crawl space. It should have been open. February in Duluth. I keep it sealed with a magnetic cover during winter and open it in April. The magnetic cover was in place, but behind it, visible when I pulled the magnet away, someone had filled the entire opening with spray foam insulation, sealed it completely. No air exchange possible. A crawl space that has been sealed against ventilation, heated beyond ambient temperature, and access through a replaced panel is not a crawl space. It is a room. I went inside to my computer, opened the Amazon account linked to our household. Tamara had purchasing privileges I had added her years ago so she could send gifts directly to the house for Elsa's birthday and Christmas. I navigated to the order history and filtered by delivery address. My home. 18 months of orders. Delivered when I was at medical appointments or grocery shopping or walking the lake trail. A space heater, 1500 watts. Ceramic, low profile, an air purifier with HEPA filtration. A child-size foam mattress, 30 inches by 65 inches. A battery-powered LED panel light with adjustable color temperature. 12 packs of colored pencils. Prismacolor Premier. 150 count. 8 pads of craft paper 18 by 24 inches. A case of bottled water. Protein bars. Canned soup. Crackers. Peanut butter. Children's vitamins. Gummy multivitamin. Ages 4 to 12. Children's toothpaste. A hairbrush. The orders began in June 2024. The month Tamara drove Elsa to the airport. The month my granddaughter supposedly flew to Michigan to begin her summer intensive at Interlochen Arts Academy. She never flew anywhere. The supplies told me where she went instead. Down. 6 feet below my porch. Into a sealed space heated by a ceramic element and lit by battery-powered panels and stocked with art supplies, because even a monster understood that a child who draws maps needs pencils and paper to survive. Tamara had not built a storage area. She had not converted a crawl space for seasonal use. She had built a world. 8 feet by 6. Climate-controlled. Sound-dampened. Invisible from above unless you happen to press a thermal scanner against the deck on an 11 below morning and watch the screen turn gold where everything else was blue. My granddaughter had been living in it for 1,091 days. Thursday morning. 6:52. I sat in my car in the Cub Foods parking lot on Central Entrance, with the engine running and the heater blowing, and a prepaid phone I had purchased the evening before at the Walmart on Haynes Road. I did not use my personal phone. If Tamara monitored our family plan, and by now I assumed she monitored everything, she would not see these calls. I dialed Interlochen Arts Academy. The main admissions line. An automated system answered, and I pressed 0 for a human voice. A woman picked up after 3 rings. Bright. Professional. Good morning, Interlochen Center for the Arts. How may I direct your call? I told her I was Arthur Lindquist, grandfather of a current student. I needed to speak with someone in the residential life office regarding my granddaughter, Elsa Lindquist. I said I was updating emergency contact information and needed to verify her current dorm assignment. She asked me to hold. 40 seconds of piano music. Then a different voice. Male. Residential life coordinator. He asked me to spell the last name. Lindquist. He typed. Silence. More typing. Then he said, "Sir, I do not have a student by that name in our current enrollment. Let me check the archive." More typing. Another silence that lasted long enough for me to count 12 heartbeats. "Sir, we have no record of an Elsa Lindquist enrolled at any point in the past 10 years. No application. No audition submission. No inquiry. I have checked all variations of the spelling. Would you like me to try a different name?" I said no. I thanked him. I hung up. I sat in that parking lot for 4 minutes, watching my breath fog the windshield. Then I dialed Cranbrook Academy of Art in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Another prestigious program. Another possibility Tamara might have used as a cover. The admissions office answered quickly. Same request. Same spelling. Same result. No Elsa Lindquist. No record. No application. No enrollment. At any point. Third call. Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp in Twin Lake, Michigan. A summer intensive program that accepts students as young as 8. If Tamara had fabricated an arts education pipeline, Blue Lake would be a logical component. I called. I asked. The registrar searched 3 databases and came back with the same answer. No. Elsa Lindquist. Never. 3 schools. 3 clean negatives. My granddaughter had not attended any institution in the state of Michigan. Not for a day. Not for an hour. The brochure Tamara spread across my kitchen table 14 months earlier was theater. The acceptance letter Eric mentioned was fabricated. The entire framework of Elsa's education was a construction as false as the access panel on my porch, close enough in appearance to avoid scrutiny. Wrong in every detail that mattered. I drove home. Tamara was at work. She commuted to a pharmaceutical sales office in Superior, Wisconsin, Monday through Friday. I had approximately 7 hours before she returned. I went to my study and opened the filing cabinet where I kept everything Tamara had sent over 3 years. Report cards, progress narratives, faculty evaluation forms, photographs of artwork supposedly created in studio classes, a certificate of merit from a student exhibition. I spread them across my desk and examined them the way I would examine a suspect survey, looking not for what was present, but for what was wrong. The report cards first. Printed on heavy cream stock. The interlochen logo at the top. A stylized treble clef, integrated with a pine tree. I opened my laptop and navigated to Interlochen's official website. Found their current letterhead on a downloadable information packet. The font on the genuine letterhead was Avenir Next. Clean. Modern. The font on Tamara's report cards was Garamond, an entirely different typeface. Serif versus sans serif. No institution changes its brand typography between semesters. The school seal. On the genuine Interlochen documents available online, the seal was vector sharp at any zoom level. On Tamara's report cards, the seal was pixelated, slightly blurred at the edges. The resolution of a JPEG that had been enlarged beyond its native size. A copy. Pulled from a website and pasted into a document template. The photographs. Elsa standing before what appeared to be a student art display. A gallery wall. White. Track lighting above. I zoomed in on the background. The other student works visible on the wall behind Elsa. I ran a reverse image search. 2 of them appeared on a stock photography website. Licensed images of generic student artwork used in educational marketing materials. The gallery was not real. The background was composited. The progress narratives. Written in a style too consistent across semesters. 3 different teachers supposedly authored these evaluations over 3 years, yet the sentence structure, vocabulary level, and comma usage patterns were identical. 1 voice. 1 author. Tamara. I pulled up the video call recordings I had saved on my computer. 156 files. I selected 12 at random, 1 from each quarter over 3 years. I examined the backgrounds. The window behind Elsa showed trees. Green leaves. In every single recording. Including December. Including February. Michigan does not have green deciduous leaves in February. The window was a static image. A loop. Unchanging. Regardless of the season. Finally, the metadata. I right-clicked a video file and opened Properties. The GPS coordinates embedded in the file data did not correspond to Traverse City, Michigan, where Interlochen is located. They corresponded to Duluth, Minnesota. Latitude 46.7 to 8. Longitude -92.1 to 0. My address. My home. The videos were recorded here. Beneath my roof. Beneath my floor. And, my granddaughter had never left Duluth. The only journey she took was vertical. 6 feet straight down. Thursday night. 11:14. The house was silent except for the furnace cycling on and off, and the wind pressing against the north-facing windows the way it does in February when Lake Superior sends its cold straight up the hill without mercy. Tamara had gone to bed at 10. I heard her footsteps cross the second-floor hallway above me. Heard the bathroom faucet run for 2 minutes. Heard the bedroom door close. Then, nothing. I sat in my study on the main floor, with the door locked and my laptop open, and 156 video files arranged chronologically in a folder labeled Elsa Calls. 3 years of Sunday conversations, 30 minutes each. 4,680 minutes of my granddaughter's face on a screen. Her voice. Her smile. Her drawings, held up to the camera. Her stories about a school that did not exist and friends whose names I could not verify, and a life that was manufactured frame by frame by the woman sleeping 2 floors above me. I am not a digital forensics expert. I am a cartographer. But 42 years at the USGS taught me to work with data. Satellite imagery. Digital elevation models. Geo-referenced photography. I understood metadata. I understood resolution analysis. I understood that every digital file carries information the creator did not intend to share. Still, I needed help. I called Howard Fenn. Howard retired from the USGS 2 years before me. Geospatial Information Systems Specialist. 38 years in the digital mapping division. He built terrain models from satellite data and could identify a 2-inch elevation change from orbital photography. More relevant to my situation. Howard spent the last 5 years of his career working with the Department of Justice on image authentication cases, identifying manipulated satellite photos used in land disputes, verifying the integrity of digital evidence. He understood how to determine whether a video file was genuine or synthetic. I called him at 7 that morning from the Cub Foods parking lot. Same prepaid phone. I told him what I suspected. I told him I needed analysis I could trust. He said, "Send me 12 files. Give me 48 hours. He called back in 31 hours. Thursday evening. I was in my study. He spoke for 22 minutes without interruption. And what he told me disassembled the last 3 years of my life with the precision of a surveyor pulling benchmarks from compromised ground. The lighting analysis first. Howard examined the angle of illumination on Elsa's face across all 12 clips. In a genuine video call, the light source varies. Time of day changes. Weather changes. Window orientation produces different shadows in morning versus afternoon. In Tamara's videos, the primary light source struck Elsa's face at exactly 42 degrees from the upper left in every single clip. 12 videos spanning 36 months. Identical angle. The probability of natural consistency across that span was effectively 0. The light was artificial, controlled, positioned once, and never moved. The voice analysis. Howard ran the audio through spectrographic software. Elsa's voice across 3 years showed pitch reduction consistent with aging. A child's fundamental frequency drops as the vocal cords lengthen. But the reduction was linear. Perfectly linear, 0.3 Hz per week. Natural vocal development in children does not follow a linear curve. It fluctuates. It accelerates during growth spurts and plateaus between them. A linear progression is the signature of algorithmic interpolation. The voice was being artificially aged at a constant programmed rate. The facial micro-expressions. Howard isolated frames 47 through 52. In each clip, the transitional frames where a human face shifts between expressions. In genuine video, these transitions are unique to each moment. No 2 smiles begin identically. In Tamara's clips, the pixel arrangement in those transitional frames repeated. Not approximately. Exactly. The same 6-frame transition appearing in 23 separate clips across a 14-month span. The expressions were templated, generated, recycled. The machine signature. Every video file is encoded by hardware that leaves a digital fingerprint, a unique machine identifier embedded in the file's container data. All 156 clips carried the same machine ID. This alone was not conclusive. They could all have been recorded on the same device, but cross-referenced with the GPS metadata showing Duluth coordinates rather than Michigan, it confirmed the recordings originated from a single device in my home. Not a dormitory, not a classroom, not a studio. Here, Howard's conclusion. Delivered quietly in the tone of a man who has spent decades distinguishing authentic terrain data from manipulated surveys. Art. These are synthetic. 94% confidence across all parameters. The visual component is AI generated from a base model, likely built from genuine source material of Elsa at age 9, and then aged algorithmically. The voice is cloned. The expressions are composited. You have been watching a fabrication for 3 years. I thanked Howard. I ended the call. I sat in my study for 11 minutes, in absolute stillness. Then I stood, walked to the front of the house, stepped onto the porch. The temperature was 14 below. The sky was clear, stars everywhere. I knelt on the deck boards, pressed my ear to the wood directly above the thermal rectangle I had mapped the day before. 2:14 in the morning. The house was silent. Tamara was asleep. The wind had dropped, and through 4 inches of cedar I heard breathing. Slow, rhythmic, the breathing of a child asleep. Real breath, real lungs, real air moving in and out of a body that was alive and warm and 6 feet below my ear. The screens had lied for 3 years, but the floor beneath me was breathing truth. Friday morning, 6:38. My phone rang. Not the prepaid. My personal phone. The screen showed a name I had not seen in 4 months. Lorraine Decker, Ingrid's accountant. The woman who had managed our finances for 22 years and who had built and administered Elsa's trust since the day Ingrid opened it in March 2015. I answered. Lorraine's voice was tight, controlled in the way a professional sounds when she is about to deliver information that crosses the line between financial concern and criminal disclosure. Art, I need to see you this morning. Not at your house. Somewhere else. Can you meet me at Northern Waters Smokehouse at 7:30? I said yes. I did not ask why. The tone told me everything the words did not. Northern Waters sits on East Superior Street downtown. Small. Crowded in the mornings with people ordering smoked fish sandwiches and pour-over coffee. Loud enough that a conversation at a corner table disappears into the ambient noise. Lorraine was already seated when I arrived at 7:26. She had a manila folder in front of her. Thick. The edges worn as though she had been handling it repeatedly over days. Her coffee was untouched. She did not greet me with small talk. She opened the folder and turned it toward me and said I should have called you sooner. I am sorry. I was not certain until last week, and I wanted to be certain before I said anything, because what I am about to tell you is not a discrepancy. It is a crime. Ingrid built that trust over 40 years. Every month. Never missed. Started at $400 a month in 1983. Increased to $600 in 95. $1,000 after 2008 when her pension vested. Compound interest at an average of 6.2% annually. By March 2024, the account held $2,500,000. Designated beneficiary Elsa Ingrid Lindquist. Access restricted until age 18, unless authorized by the designated guardian for verified educational expenses. The designated guardian was Eric. Eric's power of attorney signed in 2020. Notarized. Filed with the trust administrator. Transferred fiduciary authority to his spouse in the event he was unavailable. Tamara Collins became the de facto controller of Elsa's trust the day Eric signed that document. Lorraine turned to the second page. A spreadsheet. Withdrawals. 18 months of them. Beginning June 2024. The month Elsa supposedly left for Michigan. 22 months of disbursements totaling $2,180,000. Withdrawn in increments, designed to avoid automatic fraud alerts. Never more than $48,000 in a single transaction. Always accompanied by documentation. Tuition invoices. Housing fees. Materials costs. Travel expenses. All forged. Lorraine had traced every dollar, $1,300,000, to an entity called Northland Property Group, LLC. Registered in South Dakota. No physical office. No employees. No property holdings. A shell company that accepted wire transfers and redistributed them to secondary accounts in the Cayman Islands. Lorraine contacted the South Dakota Secretary of State. Northland Property Group was dissolved 8 months ago, after its sole managing member, an attorney in Sioux Falls, was indicted on 12 counts of wire fraud in connection with a real estate Ponzi scheme that defrauded 47 investors of a combined $19 million. Tamara's $1.3 million was gone. Unrecoverable. $580,000 across 3 accounts linked to online pharmacies and pain management clinics. Lorraine pulled the transaction records. OxyContin, hydrocodone, fentanyl patches, purchased from 3 separate prescribers in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. Tamara had been buying opioids at cash pay rates from pill mills for at least 20 months. The volume suggested either severe personal addiction or redistribution. Possibly both. 300,000. A second mortgage on my home. My house. The Victorian on the hill that Ingrid and I paid off in 2004. Tamara had forged my signature on a mortgage application filed with a regional lender in Superior, Wisconsin. The lender disbursed 300,000 secured against my property. I never signed that document. I never authorized that loan. My house, the house beneath which my granddaughter was imprisoned, was leveraged without my knowledge to fund the woman who put her there. Remaining balance in the trust, 320,000 of 2.5 million. 7% gone in 22 months. Lorraine turned to the final page. A life insurance application. Filed 8 months ago with a national carrier. Policy amount, $900,000. Insured, Elsa Ingrid Lindquist, age 9. Owner and beneficiary, Tamara Collins. The application was denied. Reason: the insurer required a pediatric wellness examination signed by a licensed physician within 90 days of application. Tamara could not produce one, because producing one would require bringing Elsa to a doctor, and bringing Elsa to a doctor would require removing her from a sealed room beneath a porch in Duluth and explaining why a 9-year-old child had not seen sunlight in 2 years. The insurance company saved my granddaughter's life. Not through compassion, through bureaucracy. A checkbox on a form that Tamara could not forge because it required a living child in a doctor's office rather than a digital signature on a screen. Lorraine closed the folder. She pushed it across the table toward me. She said, "This is yours. Everything is documented. Account numbers, transaction dates, wire transfer confirmations, the mortgage filing, the insurance denial. Take it." I picked up the folder. It weighed perhaps a pound. Inside it was the complete financial architecture of my granddaughter's imprisonment. Every dollar that Tamara extracted from Ingrid's 40 years of saving mapped onto a ledger that told the story of addiction, greed, and a child reduced to collateral. My granddaughter was not a child to Tamara. She was a coordinate on a ledger, a point on a map that led to money, and when the money ran out, there was a $900,000 policy waiting to convert that coordinate into a payout. I drove home with the folder locked in my trunk and the prepaid phone in my jacket pocket and a clarity in my chest that felt like a compass needle finally settling after spinning for days. The right moment was coming, and I would not miss it. Saturday afternoon, 2:17. I walked next door and knocked on Jerome Halverson's front door. Jerome is 71, retired electrical engineer, widower since 2018. He and his wife Karen moved in next to us in 1992. And for 32 years, we shared a property line and a mutual understanding that good neighbors observe without intruding. He shoveled my walk when I was in the field. I cleared his gutters every autumn. We exchanged waves more often than words, but the respect between us was absolute. Jerome opened the door in a flannel shirt and reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked at my face and did not ask why I was there. He said, "Come in, Art. You look like a man carrying something heavy." I told him everything. Every piece. The fingers. The thermal scan. The Amazon orders. The schools. Howard's analysis. Lorraine's folder. I spoke for 14 minutes without stopping, and Jerome listened the way an engineer listens without interrupting, without reacting until all the data is presented. When I finished, he took off his reading glasses and set them on the kitchen table and said, "I have something to show you, and I think you need to see it today." Jerome installed a security camera system in 2022 after a package theft on his porch. 4 cameras. One pointed at his driveway, one at his back door, one at the alley, and one mounted under his eave on the south side that captured a wide angle, including his property line and approximately 40% of my north-facing porch. The camera recorded continuously. Motion-activated storage. 14 months of footage retained on a 2-terabyte hard drive in his basement office. He led me downstairs and opened the monitoring software on his desktop. The interface showed 4 quadrants. He selected camera 3 South Eve and opened the archive. We started with June 2024. The month Elsa left. Or the month I was told she left. The first clip flagged by motion appeared on June 8th. 2 days after Tamara supposedly drove Elsa to the airport. Timestamp: 1:47 a.m. The image was black and white infrared night mode. But clear. Unmistakable. A figure moved from my back door across the yard to the north side of the porch. Female. Tamara's build. Tamara's gait. She carried a large reusable shopping bag in her right hand. She knelt at the porch lattice at the location of the access panel and disappeared beneath the structure. She was under for 9 minutes. When she emerged, the bag was empty. Folded under her arm. Jerome scrolled forward. Another clip. June 11th. Same time, same route, same bag. 8 minutes under. Emerged. Empty-handed. Again. June 15th. 1:22 a.m. Bag full going in. Empty, coming out. He scrolled through months. The pattern was consistent. Twice per week. Sometimes 3 times. Always between midnight and 3 a.m. Always the same choreography. Bag in. Time underneath ranging from 7 to 19 minutes depending on what she carried. Bag out empty or folded. I asked Jerome to search for March dates specifically. March 14th. Elsa's birthday. He found it. March 14th. 2025. 1:11 a.m. Tamara crossed the yard, carrying a rectangular box wrapped in paper that caught the infrared light. Lighter color. Possibly pink or yellow. Birthday wrapping. In her other hand, she held a smaller bag. She went under. She was under for 22 minutes. 22 minutes. Longer than any supply run. She emerged with the wrapping paper folded in her hand, but no box. She had delivered a birthday present to a child beneath my porch at 1 in the morning and stayed long enough to what? Watch her open it? Sing to her? Light candles in a sealed room with no ventilation beyond an air purifier? March 14th, 2026. Same pattern. Wrapped gift. 24 minutes underground. Emerged. Without it. March 14th, 2027. Most recent birthday. 3 weeks ago. Wrapped gift. 19 minutes. Same result. 3 birthdays celebrated underground. 3 years of a mother bringing cake and gifts to a child imprisoned beneath her grandfather's home while the grandfather slept 40 feet above and dreamed of video calls from Michigan. Jerome had cataloged the footage without knowing what it meant. He told me he noticed the pattern months ago, Tamara visiting the crawl space at odd hours, but assumed she was storing something. Wine, documents, seasonal items. He did not imagine a child. No reasonable person would imagine a child. He opened his file manager and showed me the folder. 247 clips, spanning 14 months of continuous recording. Every single visit documented with timestamp, duration, and visual confirmation of Tamara's identity. I asked him if I could have copies. He pulled a 64-gigabyte USB drive from his desk drawer, already loaded. He had prepared it before I knocked. "I thought you might need this eventually," he said. I did not know why. But something about a woman visiting a crawl space at 2 in the morning never sat right with me. It is not something a person does for storage. I took the USB, 64 gigabytes, 247 files, 14 months of irrefutable documentation. Time-stamped. Motion-triggered. Unedited. A security camera does not lie the way a video call lies. It does not composite. It does not synthesize. It simply records what passes in front of its lens. 247 clips. 247 times she fed a child in the dark and returned to sleep beside my son, as though nothing existed beneath the frost line, as though the crawl space held nothing but pipes and stone and cold air. as though my granddaughter was 400 miles south learning to draw in a studio with north-facing windows and natural light. I drove home with the USB in my jacket pocket beside the prepaid phone. 2 pieces of evidence that together weighed less than 3 ounces. Light enough to carry in one hand. Heavy enough to end a life. Tuesday night. 11:14. The house was dark. Tamara had gone upstairs at 9:45 early for her, but she mentioned a headache at dinner and took 2 pills from her purse and climbed the stairs without saying goodnight. I heard the bedroom door close. Heard nothing after that. I sat in my study with the door locked and the prepaid phone in my hand and the weight of 7 days pressing against the inside of my ribs. 7 days since Cal found the fingers. 7 days of measuring and verifying and documenting and building a case the way I once built survey networks, one benchmark at a time, each confirmed before the next was placed. The network was complete now. Every point triangulated. Every bearing verified. Every piece of evidence cross-referenced against at least one independent source. Thermal scan. Amazon records. 3 schools confirming 0 enrollment. Howard's synthetic analysis at 94% confidence. Lorraine's financial documentation showing 2.18 million extracted. Jerome's 247 surveillance clips spanning 14 months. The folder. The USB. The metadata. The fonts. The seals. The GPS coordinates embedded in 156 fabricated video calls. It was enough. It was more than enough. But I needed 2 things before I could act. Confirmation from Eric and a warrant from the law. I dialed Eric's cell phone. He answered on the second ring. His voice was alert despite the hour. Eric has always been a light sleeper. A man who keeps his phone beside his bed because his work sometimes calls him at 3 a.m. for logistics emergencies. Dad, is everything okay? I said, Eric, I need you to answer one question honestly and completely. When was the last time you saw Elsa in person? Not on a screen. Not in a photograph. In person. Your eyes on her body in the same room. Silence. Long enough that I heard him breathing. Long enough that I knew the answer before he spoke it. Drop-off day. June 6th. 3 years ago. Tamara drove her to the airport and I was at work. I did not go. Tamara said it would be easier without a big goodbye. Less emotional for Elsa. I agreed. You have not seen your daughter in person in 3 years. Another silence. Then his voice cracking at the seams, the way wood cracks when the moisture finally leaves it. Dad, what is this about? What is wrong? I told him. Not everything. Not the details. Only the conclusion. Elsa never went to Michigan. She never attended Interlochen. She is here. In Duluth. Beneath my porch. She has been there since June 2024. Tamara built a room under the crawl space and has been keeping her there. I have evidence. Physical, digital, financial, surveillance. It is conclusive. Eric did not speak for 12 seconds. I counted them against my heartbeat. Then a sound came through the phone that I had not heard from my son since he was 9 years old and fell from the oak tree in the backyard and broke his collarbone. A sound between a gasp and a moan. The sound of a man whose skeleton has just been shown to be made of something other than what he believed. I said, Eric, listen to me. Do not tell Tamara. Do not call her. Do not change your behavior in any way. I am contacting law enforcement tonight. They will come tomorrow or the day after. If Tamara suspects anything, she may act. Do you understand what I am saying? He said yes. His voice was flat. Emptied. I am coming up there. Not yet. Wait until I call you. It will be soon. 24 hours. Maybe less. Can you do that? Yes. Eric. This is not your fault. He did not answer that. He simply said, get her out, Dad. Please. Get her out. I hung up. Sat for 3 minutes. Then I dialed the second number, the one I had looked up that afternoon on the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office website. Detective Division, non-emergency line. After hours, calls route to dispatch. A woman answered. Sheriff's Office, how may I help you? I asked for the detective on call. She said, may I ask the nature of the call? I said I have evidence that a child has been unlawfully imprisoned beneath a residential structure for approximately 3 years. I need to speak with a detective tonight. Hold please. 90 seconds. Then a voice. Female. Direct. No warmth but no coldness either. The voice of a person trained to receive terrible information without letting it move her off center. This is Detective Nina Vasquez. I understand you are reporting a child imprisonment. Tell me everything, I told her. Methodically. In the order I had discovered it. Beginning with Cal and the fingers and ending with Jerome's USB and Lorraine's folder. I spoke for 19 minutes. She did not interrupt once. When I finished, she asked 4 questions: the address, the child's age, whether the suspect was currently in the home, and whether I believed the child was in immediate medical danger. I answered all 4. Then she said something that settled into my chest, the way a compass needle settles, when it finally finds north after spinning in confusion. Mr. Lindquist. We are coming. Wednesday morning. 6:30 a.m. Judge Erickson has a standing early calendar. I will have a warrant, signed by 6. Do not approach the crawl space. Do not confront the suspect. Do not alter your routine tonight or tomorrow. Can you do that? I said yes. She said one more thing. You did this right. The evidence package you have described is thorough. That matters. It means we go in with authority, and we come out with your granddaughter. 34 hours. 34 hours. I had measured everything in my life by inches and degrees. Contour intervals of 20 feet. Benchmark elevations to the 100th. Magnetic declinations to the half degree. Now I measured in hours. 34 until the wall came down. 34 until the compass pointed not to north on a map, but to a living child beneath the frozen ground. I set the prepaid phone on my desk. I placed Ingrid's compass beside it. The needle pointed north-northwest. Toward the porch. Toward Elsa. 34 hours. I could wait 34 hours. I had made my granddaughter wait 1,091 days. 34 hours was nothing. 34 hours was mercy I did not deserve. I did not sleep. I did not try. Sleep would have required closing my eyes, and closing my eyes would have meant trusting the darkness, and I had spent 3 years trusting a darkness that hid my granddaughter 6 feet below my morning coffee. I was done trusting what I could not see. Tuesday night became Wednesday morning, the way a held note becomes silence gradually, then all at once. I sat in the kitchen until midnight. Then I stood and walked to the front porch and lay down on the deck boards with my coat zipped to my throat and a wool blanket pulled from the hall closet, and the temperature somewhere around 9 below, and the stars so sharp above Lake Superior that they looked like benchmarks on a celestial survey. I pressed my ear to the wood. At first only the sound of the house. The furnace cycling somewhere inside. A pipe ticking as heated water expanded copper. The faint hum of the refrigerator transmitted through floor joists. Normal sounds. The acoustic signature of a home performing its function. Then beneath those sounds, lower, softer. A rhythm I had to hold my breath to isolate. Breathing. Slow. Even. The respiration of a child asleep. Approximately 14 breaths per minute. I counted them against the second hand of my watch. 14. Consistent. Healthy. The breathing of someone small who had been breathing in that exact position for 1,091 nights, and whose lungs had learned to fill quietly because quiet was safety and safety was survival. I lay there and counted her breaths and tried to calculate how many I had missed. 1,091 nights multiplied by approximately 8 hours of sleep multiplied by 14 breaths per minute multiplied by 60 minutes. That number would be in the millions. Millions of breaths taken beneath my floor while I slept above in a bed 40 feet away, dreaming of nothing. At 12:47, I heard Tamara's footsteps. Not above me, I was outside now, on the porch. But Jerome's camera would catch this. The sound came from the back of the house, the kitchen door opening. Footsteps on the frozen grass. I did not move. I was flat on the porch deck in darkness, and she would not see me from the backyard. I heard her pass along the north side, heard the access panel shift the faint scrape of plywood against lattice. Then nothing for 11 minutes. She was underneath. 11 minutes. Then, the panel again. Footsteps returning. Kitchen door closing. Silence. 1:22 in the morning. Tamara Collins had just visited my granddaughter in her underground cell and returned to bed in my house, as though she had simply gone downstairs for a glass of water. Routine. Mechanical. The way a farmer checks livestock before dawn. Not love. Maintenance. I remained on the porch. The cold was severe, but I did not feel it in any way that mattered. My body registered the temperature. My fingers stiffened. My ears burned. But my mind was elsewhere. Calculating. 34 hours had become 29. Wednesday morning. 6:30. Vasquez. Erickson's warrant. The end of this. At 2:43, something changed beneath me. The breathing shifted. Faster. The sound of a child waking. A small adjustment body rolling over, perhaps. Springs in a mattress compressing. Then a new sound. Light. Rhythmic. Scratching. Pencil on paper. Elsa was drawing. At 2:43 in the morning, in a room beneath my porch, in 9 below darkness, she was awake, and she was drawing. I could hear the specific cadence, short strokes for detail work, longer sweeps for borders and edges, the sound a colored pencil makes on craft paper when pressed at medium weight. I knew that sound. I had heard it every Sunday morning for 5 years at my kitchen table. Ingrid's butcher paper, Elsas maps. She was still mapping. After 1,091 days in a room she could cross in 4 steps, she was still drawing the world she could not see. Still plotting coordinates. Still marking compass roses. Still pointing north on paper because paper was the only terrain she could walk. I pressed my forehead to the boards and whispered. Not loud enough for her to hear. Not loud enough for anyone to hear. Just loud enough for me. I am here. North is north. I am coming. The words fogged against the cold wood and disappeared. Below me, the pencil continued its rhythm. Stroke. Stroke. Sweep. Stroke. A cartographer at work. My blood. My training. My Sunday mornings distilled into a child's survival mechanism. I reached into my jacket pocket and withdrew the letter I had written earlier that evening. A single sheet of paper folded into quarters. I had written it in mirror script. Our code. Backward letters that could only be read in a mirror or by someone who had spent 5 years practicing reverse writing at a kitchen table with her grandfather. The letter said, Elsa, I know you are there. I am above you right now. Tomorrow morning, people are coming to open the door. You will see sunlight. You will see me. I am sorry it took this long. A compass does not lie. North is north. And I am coming. I did not deliver it. I could not open the access panel without risking everything Vasquez had ordered me not to do. So I kept it in my pocket, against my chest. A message, undelivered, but written. Proof that in the last hours before rescue I had finally found the words I should have spoken 3 years earlier. 4:17. The pencil sound stopped. Breathing slowed again. 14 per minute. She had gone back to sleep. I lay on that porch until 5:45. Then I rose. My joints cracked. My back ached. From 2 hours on frozen cedar. I went inside and made coffee, and showered and dressed in clean clothes, and placed Ingrid's compass on the kitchen table pointing north and waited. In 6 hours the compass would point to something more than north. It would point to her. 6:32. Wednesday morning. 3 vehicles came up the hill in formation. No sirens, no lights. Just the sound of engines climbing the grade and tires crunching on ice-packed asphalt. A black unmarked sedan. A white forensic services van. A marked St. Louis County Sheriff's cruiser. They parked at the curb in front of my house, the way survey trucks park, at a job site precise, deliberate, positioned for the work ahead. Detective Nina Vasquez stepped out of the sedan first. She was shorter than I expected from her phone voice. 5'4" perhaps. Dark hair pulled back. A navy blue coat over a ballistic vest. No wasted movement. She scanned the house front to porch to roofline the way I scan terrain reading it, identifying access points. Calculating angles. Behind her. Officer Kang from the cruiser. Young. Broad. Shouldered. Alert in the way. A man is alert when he knows what he has been briefed to expect, but has never encountered it in the field. From the forensic van. Dr. Lena Petrov, forensic technician. She carried a black equipment case in each hand and wore nitrile gloves already pulled on despite the cold. Vasquez walked up my porch steps. I had the front door open before she reached it. She looked at my face. Nodded once. Mr. Lindquist. We have the warrant. Judge Erickson signed at 6:04. She held up a folded document. I did not need to read it. I had been reading it in my mind for 34 hours. Where is the suspect? Upstairs. Second floor. Bedroom at the end of the hall. She has not come down yet this morning. Vasquez turned to Kang. Second floor. End of hall. Detain and secure. Do not engage beyond identification and Miranda. I want her away from any window facing the porch. Kang moved through my front door and up the staircase without hesitation. His boots on the old pine treads were the loudest sound in the house. I heard him reach the second floor. Heard a door open. Heard a voice, Tamara's, sharp and confused. What is this? Who are you? Then Kang's voice. Even. Professional. Ma'am, I am Officer Kang with the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office. I need you to remain in this room. Please, sit down. Tamara's voice again. Higher now. Art. Art. What is happening? I did not answer. I was already walking through the kitchen toward the back door. Vasquez beside me. Petrov behind her. We crossed the frozen yard to the north side of the porch, where the access panel waited behind the lattice skirting. Vasquez knelt and examined the panel. She ran her gloved hand along the edge. Noted the Robertson screws. The newer paint. She looked up at me. This is not original. No. I installed the original in 1990. Phillips head screws. Different paint. This was replaced sometime in the last 3 years. Petrov photographed the panel from 4 angles before Vasquez removed the 6 screws with a battery-powered driver. The plywood came away, and behind it was not the open crawl space I had insulated in 1989. Behind it was a wall of polyisocyanurate insulation board 2-inch thick, foil-faced, industrial grade, fitted precisely into the opening and sealed at every edge with expanding foam. Professional. Intentional. A barrier designed to block sight, sound, and thermal signature from reaching the exterior. Petrov cut through the foam seal with a utility knife. Vasquez pulled the insulation panel away. Behind it, the crawl space narrowed to a corridor approximately 3 feet wide and 4 feet tall, running 6 feet back toward the area beneath the main porch deck. The corridor was floored with plywood new, smooth, unstained. The walls were lined with additional insulation board. At the end of the corridor, a steel door. Commercial grade, painted gray, fitted with an electronic keypad lock. A small green LED glowed steadily beside the handle, indicating the system was powered and armed. Vasquez studied the door for 10 seconds. Then she turned to Petrov. Can you bypass? Petrov set down her equipment case. Opened it. Removed a tablet connected to a cable with a magnetic interface. She pressed the magnet to the keypad housing and typed for approximately 40 seconds. The manufacturer's override protocol. Every electronic lock sold in the United States is required to have one accessible to law enforcement. with the proper equipment and authorization. The LED flickered, turned from green to amber, then back to green. A click. The bolt retracted. The magnetic lock released. Vasquez looked at me. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes shifted. A softening that lasted perhaps 1 second before professionalism reasserted itself. "Mr. Lindquist, she is your granddaughter. You open it." I reached for the handle. Steel. Cold even through the latex gloves Petrov had given me. I turned it clockwise, felt the mechanism release, pulled the door toward me. Darkness. Complete. The corridor light reached perhaps 2 feet into the space beyond the door. I saw the edge of a floor plywood again, covered with something soft. A rug, perhaps. The air that came through the opening was warm, 72 degrees at least. It carried scent. Colored pencil shavings, that waxy, woody smell I knew from 10,000 Sunday mornings. Paper. Clean laundry. Something faintly sweet, like children's toothpaste. I stood in the doorway. Vasquez behind me with a flashlight she had not yet turned on. Petrov, documenting. The corridor silent, except for the hum of a space heater somewhere inside. 3 seconds of absolute silence. Then a voice. Small, clear, steady in a way that broke something inside my chest, because steadiness in that context meant she had been waiting. Not surprised, not frightened. Waiting. As though she had heard the screws being removed and the foam being cut and the bolt retracting, and she had been counting the seconds the way I had counted her breaths the night before. One word. Through 3 years of darkness. Through 1,091 days of sealed silence. One word that told me she was alive and present, and remembered exactly who stood on the other side of every door she had ever opened in her life. Grandpa, 4 steps down. Plywood treads. Each one solid beneath my weight. Vasquez turned on her flashlight behind me and the beam swept over my shoulder into the space below, and what it revealed stopped my breath. The way a survey reveals terrain you did not know existed on the other side of a ridge. A room. 8 feet by 6. Ceiling height 4 feet 9 inches. I knew this by instinct because my head cleared it by less than an inch, and I am 5 feet 10. The floor was plywood covered with a braided rug, blue and gray, machine-made. The kind sold at Target for $30. Against the south wall. A child-size foam mattress on a low platform, neatly made. A fleece blanket folded at the foot. A pillow with a case that had small stars printed on it. Against the north wall. A desk. A folding table, actually. Metal legs. Particle board top. On it. Colored pencils in 3 ceramic cups organized by hue. Warm tones. Cool tones. Earth tones. Beside them, a stack of craft paper pads, 18 by 24 inches. Some used. Some fresh. A pencil sharpener. Eraser shavings swept into a small pile at the corner of the desk, as though tidiness was the one thing she could control in a space where nothing else belonged to her. Against the east wall, a shelf unit. Plastic. 4 tiers. Books. Dozens of them. Children's chapter books. A few middle-grade novels. An Atlas Rand McNally. Large format. A geometry textbook that looked too advanced for a 9-year-old but not for a child who thought in spatial relationships. On the bottom shelf, the space heater. Ceramic. 1,500 watts. Humming at low. Beside it, the air purifier, HEPA. Running silent, except for a faint whisper of filtered air. And the walls. Every inch. Every square foot of insulation board that lined that room was covered in drawings. Not random. Not childish scrawl. Maps. Dozens of them. A map of the house above 3 stories rendered in cross-section from memory with room dimensions so accurate, I could have used them as a blueprint. A map of the yard. The street. The neighborhood. A map of Duluth stretching from Canal Park to the Lake Walk to the East End, with street names labeled in tiny, precise lettering. A map of Lake Superior, the full crescent from Duluth to Sault Ste. Marie, with depth markings she must have memorized from the atlas on her shelf. A map of the route from Duluth to Interlaken, Michigan. 400 miles. Every highway numbered. Every city labeled. A journey she never took, drawn in perfect detail from a road atlas she studied in a room she could not leave, and along the skirting board. At floor level, running the entire perimeter of the room, 1,095 compass roses. Small, each approximately 1 inch in diameter, drawn in different colored pencils rotating through the spectrum day by day. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, then back to red. Each compass rose had 4 points. Each had the N at the top. Each N pointed upward, north, up, out. 1,095. 4 more than the 1,091 days I had calculated. She had drawn 4 extra. 4 compass roses for days that had not yet happened, as though she knew someone was coming, as though she had heard the measurements being taken above her, the tuning fork of my footsteps changing frequency over the past week, and she had begun counting forward instead of backward. Vasquez's flashlight found the corner of the room last. The southeast corner. And there she was, Elsa, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall and her knees drawn up and her arms wrapped around something held against her chest. The compass. Ingrid's compass. North Star. Brass. The size of a pocket watch in her small hands. She had taken it with her the day she supposedly left for Michigan. She had carried it into this room and held it for 1,091 days, and the brass was worn smooth where her thumbs had rubbed the case 10,000 times. She was thin. Not skeletal but diminished. The angles of her face sharper than a 12-year-old's should be. Her hair was long past her shoulders, past her elbows unwashed, for perhaps a week but not matted. She wore gray leggings and a lavender sweatshirt that was too small. Her feet were bare. Her eyes, Ingrid's eyes, were open, clear, gray, blue, looking directly at me, without fear. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not scramble backward. She looked at me the way a person looks at a landmark they have been navigating toward for years. Recognition, confirmation, arrival. "You found north," she said. I crossed the room in 2 steps, dropped to my knees in front of her. She smelled like pencil shavings and paper, and the faint chemical sweetness of the air purifier. I put my arms around her. She was warm, real, breathing against my chest at 14 breaths per minute. The same rhythm I had counted through the floorboards 12 hours earlier. She pressed the compass into my hand. The brass was body temperature. She said I kept it pointing up. Every night. Even when I could not see it. I held it and pointed it at the ceiling, because you said north is always up on a map. I could not speak. I held her. Vasquez stood at the top of the stairs and said nothing. Petrov documented in silence. The heater hummed. The air purifier whispered. 1,095 compass roses surrounded us on every wall, each one pointing up. Each one saying the same thing. I am here. I remember. Come find me. I lifted her. She weighed nothing. 60 pounds, perhaps. The weight of a child who had been fed enough to survive, but not enough to grow properly. I carried her up the 4 steps, through the corridor, through the access panel opening, into the yard. February light hit her face. Gray. Overcast. 9 o'clock morning sun filtered through cloud cover. Not direct, not warm, but real. The first natural light to touch her skin in 3 years. She closed her eyes, then opened them, looked up at the sky, looked at the birch trees, looked at the snow on the ground, reached one hand down and touched the frozen earth with her fingertips. It is real ground, she said. It is cold. It does not end at a wall. She took 1 step onto the frozen ground and looked up at the sky, she had not seen in 3 years. And she did not cry. She pointed north. The ambulance arrived in 4 minutes. I did not call it. Vasquez had dispatched it before they breached the access panel. Standard protocol for a child recovery. The paramedics came up the hill with no siren, just the engine and the tires on ice, and parked behind the forensic van. 2 EMTs. A man and a woman. They approached with a stretcher, but Elsa would not let go of my hand, so they left the stretcher on the ground and walked beside us instead. 8 minutes to Street Luke's hospital on Superior Street. The same hospital where Ingrid died. The same building. Different floor. Different purpose. Ingrid went in and did not come out. Elsa went in and would come out. That symmetry sat in my chest like a stone balanced on a fulcrum. In the ambulance, Elsa held my hand with her left and held the compass with her right. She did not speak during the ride. She watched the window, a small square of glass above the rear doors, and I could see her tracking the movement of buildings and trees and sky passing above us, mapping the route. Even now, even in this moment, between captivity and freedom, her brain was drawing the path from the house to wherever we were going, because knowing where you are is the first act of a person reclaiming their autonomy. The EMTs took vitals in transit. Heart rate, 80. 8. Elevated, but not dangerous. Blood pressure, 90. Over 50. 8. Low, consistent with chronic mild dehydration and caloric restriction. Oxygen saturation, 97%. Temperature, 98.1. She was alive, functioning, not in crisis, but diminished in ways that numbers on a monitor could only partially describe. They admitted her through the emergency entrance and moved her immediately to the pediatric unit. 4th floor, room 307. East-facing window. When the nurse opened the blinds, the morning light came through, and Elsa stood up from the bed where they had placed her and crossed the room and pressed both palms flat against the glass. Lake Superior. Visible from the 4th floor. Gray-blue under February overcast. Stretching east toward Wisconsin and north toward the open water beyond the Apostle Islands. The same lake visible from our porch. The same water she had drawn 200 times on craft paper in a room where she could not see it. "That is the lake," she said. "I drew it so many times. I used the atlas to get the shape right. But I forgot how far it goes. I made it too small every time. It does not end." The nurse, a woman named Clara, who had 3 children of her own, and whose eyes were red at the edges from the moment she read the intake notes, said, "You can see it every day from this window, sweetheart. It will be here when you wake up tomorrow." Elsa did not turn from the glass. She said, "I know. I just want to make sure it does not move." The doctors came within the hour. Pediatrician, child psychologist, nutritionist. They examined her with the gentleness of people handling something both precious and fragile. Their findings confirmed what the numbers suggested. Underweight by approximately 14 pounds for her age and height. Vitamin D deficiency severe. Expected after 3 years without natural sunlight. Mild anemia. Dental health surprisingly adequate. Tamara had provided toothpaste and a brush. No broken bones. No signs of physical assault beyond the imprisonment itself. Cognitive function. Intact. Fully intact. The psychologist spoke with Elsa for 20 minutes and reported that her vocabulary, reasoning, and emotional regulation were consistent with a child her age or above. She had been reading, drawing, thinking, teaching herself geometry from the textbook on her shelf. Her mind had not atrophied. It had adapted, turned inward, built an interior world of coordinates and distances and compass points to replace the exterior world that was taken from her. But her eyes. The psychologist told me later. Outside the room. Her eyes track movement, the way a prey animal tracks a predator. She is hypervigilant. She monitors every doorway, every footstep. She will need years of support to unlearn the lesson that closed spaces teach. I sat beside her bed through the morning. She ate a cup of applesauce and half a turkey sandwich and drank 3 glasses of water and asked if she could have colored pencils. The nurse brought a box from the pediatric activity room. 12 basic Crayolas. Elsa accepted them without complaint, but I saw her fingers test the points and register that they were wax, not Prismacolor, not the pencils she knew, but adequate. She began drawing on the back of a hospital menu. A compass rose. North at the top. Eric arrived at 1:17 in the afternoon. 3 hours and 47 minutes from Minneapolis. 155 miles on Interstate 35. He must have driven 90 the entire way, because the math does not otherwise work. He came through the door of room 307 in jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt he had clearly grabbed from a laundry pile. His face was gray. His eyes were swollen. He saw Elsa and stopped. 3 feet inside the doorway. She was sitting up in bed with the colored pencils and the hospital menu and the compass on the bedside table. She looked up at him. "Hi, Daddy." Eric's knees buckled. Not metaphorically. Literally. His legs folded, and he caught himself on the doorframe with one hand, and then he was on the floor, kneeling. Then, crawling the 3 feet to her bed. Then his arms around her, his face pressed into her shoulder. His body shaking in the way. Bodies shake when sound cannot escape fast enough through the throat. Elsa put one hand on his head. Small fingers in his hair. The same fingers that had gripped a copper pipe and written 4 letters in condensation 6 days ago. "Why did you never come to get me?" she said. It was not accusation. It was genuine inquiry. The question of a child who had waited every single night for a door to open, and for 3 years, it did not. Eric could not answer. His mouth opened, but nothing came. He pulled back and looked at her face, and his expression was a landscape I had never seen on my son before. Guilt so deep, it had its own topography. Valleys and fault lines in places where the ground had simply fallen away. "I am here now," he said. "I am not leaving. Never again. Something broke in my son that morning that would take years to mend. But he was here. And north was north again. 5 days after the wall came down, Detective Vasquez called me to the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office on 4th Street for a formal briefing. She met me in a second-floor conference room. Fluorescent lights. A long table. A laptop connected to a wall-mounted screen. She had coffee waiting. She did not waste time. "We found the contractor," she said. "His name is Ray Nemi, licensed general contractor out of Hermantown. Tamara hired him in May 2024. 1 month before Elsa supposedly left for Michigan. She told him she wanted a climate-controlled storage room beneath the porch, said she was preserving her mother-in-law's estate documents and vintage textiles, needed temperature regulation, humidity control, and a secure door to prevent moisture damage. He built it in 9 days, charged $42,000. He installed the insulation corridor, the steel door, and the keypad lock. He never questioned why a storage room needed a ventilation system rated for continuous human occupancy. He says he did not know. Vasquez clicked to the next slide. The digital fabrication. The video calls were generated using a software platform called Voice Mirror, consumer-grade AI voice cloning. Available online for $24.99 per month. It requires approximately 40 source audio clips to build a voice model. Tamara had 43 clips of Elsa birthday videos. Home recordings from 2023. Voicemails Elsa left on Eric's phone. She fed them into the system before June 2024. The platform generated synthetic voice output that matched Elsa's vocal patterns and could be aged algorithmically at a user-defined rate. Tamara set the aging parameter to mimic natural development over a 3-year span. The video component used a separate deepfake platform, one that accepted still photographs as source material and generated animated facial sequences, synced to the synthetic voice output. Tamara had over 200 photographs of Elsa from 2023. enough to build a visual model that could produce 30-minute video calls with expression variation and apparent spontaneity. 156 calls, 3 years. $24.99 a month. My granddaughter's existence, replaced by a subscription service that cost less than a streaming platform. Vasquez closed the laptop. She looked at me across the table and said the financial case is equally conclusive. Lorraine Decker's documentation matched bank records subpoenaed from 4 institutions. Every dollar Tamara withdrew from the trust was traced. Every forged invoice for tuition and housing was cataloged. The second mortgage on my property was confirmed fraudulent. My signature was digitally composited from scanned documents. Tamara accessed through Eric's home office files. The St. Louis County District Attorney filed charges on Monday. 9 counts. 1. Unlawful imprisonment of a minor. Minnesota Statute 609.255. Subdivision 3. Imprisonment exceeding 180 days. Mandatory minimum 15 years. 2. Fraud. Wire fraud in connection with trust disbursements crossing state lines. 3. Forgery. Report cards. School. Enrollment documents. The mortgage application. 4. Embezzlement. $2,180,000 diverted from a fiduciary trust. 5. Child endangerment. Confinement of a minor in conditions constituting substantial risk to physical and emotional health. 6. Identity theft. Use of Elsa's personal information to generate synthetic media without consent. 7. Exploitation of a vulnerable person. Financial exploitation of a minor beneficiary by a designated fiduciary. 8. Mortgage fraud. Forgery of property owner's signature to obtain secured lending. 9. Insurance fraud. Filing a life insurance application containing material misrepresentation regarding the insured's living conditions and availability for examination. 9 counts, each carrying independent sentencing guidelines. The DA's office estimated cumulative exposure at 45 to 60 years. The trial began 4 months later in St. Louis County District Court. I attended every day. Eric attended every day. Elsa did not attend. The psychologist recommended against it, and the judge agreed. She watched portions of the proceedings on a closed-circuit feed from a support room with her therapist present. Tamara's defense attorney argued diminished capacity, opioid addiction, impaired judgment, a woman trapped in a cycle of dependency who made catastrophic decisions under chemical influence. The attorney presented pharmacy records and a psychiatrist who testified that chronic opioid use damages prefrontal cortex function and impairs moral reasoning. Prosecutor David Hagan did not argue against the addiction. He acknowledged it. Then he said addiction explains the financial decisions. It does not explain building a room. It does not explain hiring a contractor. It does not explain purchasing voice cloning software. It does not explain maintaining a 3-year deception that required weekly preparation and sustained effort. Those are not the actions of a person in diminished capacity. Those are the actions of a person who measured every angle and calculated every risk and made a deliberate choice to erase a child's existence for profit. He paused, looked at the jury, then said she did not lose her way. She erased her daughter's map entirely. Every road, every landmark, every coordinate that connected that child to the world above. She did it with precision, and she did it for money. And she did it for 1,091 days without stopping. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all 9 counts. Judge Margaret Erickson, the same judge who signed the warrant at 6:04 on a Wednesday morning, sentenced Tamara Collins to 34 years in the Minnesota Correctional Facility in Shakopee. No possibility of parole before 20 years. 34 years. 1 for every hour I waited between Vasquez's phone call and the moment the wall came down. Tamara did not look at me when the sentence was read. She looked at the table. Her attorney placed a hand on her shoulder. She did not move. Outside the courtroom, Lorraine Decker stood in the hallway. She had attended every day of the trial in the gallery's second row without speaking to anyone. She touched my arm as I passed and said 4 words. Ingrid would be proud. I nodded. I did not trust my voice. I walked out of the courthouse into November sunlight and stood on the steps and breathed cold air and thought about a compass needle that had finally stopped spinning. 34 years. Justice does not redraw the map. It does not return stolen time or restore the terrain that erosion has taken. But it marks where the crime was committed, permanently, so that no one can ever claim the ground was empty. 2 years pass the way a compass needle settles after disturbance, slowly at first, oscillating between directions, then finding its bearing and holding steady. Not still, never perfectly still, but true. Elsa is 12 now. We live on Park Point, the narrow sand spit that separates the harbor from Lake Superior. A small house, 1 story, no basement, no crawl space, no porch elevated above sealed ground. I chose it specifically for what it lacked. Windows on every side. 6 of them in Elsa's room alone. She asked for that. She said, I want to see out from every angle. I want to know where I am when I wake up. The house has a Steinway upright that belonged to Ingrid's sister in Eau Claire. Elsa does not play piano. She draws. But sometimes she runs her fingers across the keys the way a person touches a photograph of someone they loved. A gesture of connection, not performance. She attends Duluth East Middle School. 6th grade. Her teachers describe her as quiet, observant, and exceptionally gifted in mathematics and visual arts. She has 2 friends, Marit, a Norwegian girl whose family fishes commercial herring out of Knife River, and Yuki, whose parents run a ramen restaurant on East 4th Street. The 3 of them walk to school together along the lake walk every morning, regardless of weather. Elsa says the wind off the lake reminds her that the world is large and open and does not end at a wall. Her therapist's name is Dr. Sung. They meet every Thursday at 4. Elsa told me after 6 months of sessions that Dr. Sung said something she liked. She said healing is not a destination on a map. It is the act of drawing the map. You do not arrive. You just keep drawing. Elsa liked that. She said it sounds like something you would say, Grandpa, every Sunday morning. Our ritual. We sit at the kitchen table with a large sheet of paper, not butcher paper anymore, but proper cartographic vellum I ordered from a survey supply company in Denver, and we draw what Elsa calls the map of the week, 7 days of her life rendered as terrain. Monday, school, marked with a small triangle, like a benchmark. Tuesday, library, marked with a book symbol she invented. Wednesday, the harbor, where she and Marit watch the ore boats. Thursday, Dr. Sung, marked with a compass rose. Friday, dinner at Yuki's family restaurant, marked with a bowl. Saturday, whatever adventure she chose. Sunday, this, the map itself, recursive, a map that includes the act of mapping, 52 maps per year. We are on map 104, 2 years of Sundays, each one pinned to the hallway wall in chronological order. A timeline of recovery drawn in colored pencil on vellum. Anyone walking that hallway can see a life reconstructing itself 1 week at a time. The pencil lines growing more confident. The symbols becoming more elaborate. The territory expanding outward from the house, to the neighborhood, to the city, to the lake, to the world. Ingrid's compass sits on Elsa's desk. North Star. The brass worn to gold by 3 years of thumbs pressing against it in darkness. Elsa does not carry it anymore. She does not need to, but it remains where she can see it. A landmark. A known point. A benchmark she can shoot an azimuth from when she needs to confirm her position. The 1,095 compass roses from the crawlspace walls were photographed by Petrov's forensic team before the room was demolished. High resolution. Every one. I had them printed in a cloth-bound book archival paper, Linen cover. No text, except the title page. 1095 Norths. By Elsa Lindquist. Age 9 to 12. He gave one copy to Elsa. One to Eric. One to the Duluth Public Library, where it sits in the local history collection, beside photographs of ore docks and logging camps and other documents of survival. My morning ritual. Every day. 6:15. I walk to the kitchen. I pick up the compass from beside the coffee maker. My own compass. A Brunton I carried for 42 years. I open the lid. I watch the needle settle. North-northwest, toward the lake. Toward the open water. Toward the direction that never changes, regardless of what men and women do to each other in the houses that sit upon the earth. 440 North. Still true. In March, Elsa entered the Lake Superior Regional Youth Art Show, a competition for students ages 10 to 16 across the Arrowhead region. 112 entries. She submitted a piece she had worked on for 3 months. A mixed media drawing on vellum, 48 inches by 36. She called it Map of Home. It was not a map of our house on Park Point. It was not a map of the Victorian on the hill. It was a map of the space between them. The distance traveled. The crawl space rendered small and dark in the lower left corner. The new house rendered large and bright in the upper right. And between them, every landmark of her recovery. The hospital room. The lake through glass. The school hallway. Marit's fishing boat. Yuki's restaurant. Dr. Sung's office. The Sunday table. The vellum. The pencils. 1,095 compass roses formed the border. Each one pointing north. Each one pointing up. Each one pointing out. She won first place. The adjudicator wrote in her evaluation, "This is not a map of geography. It is a map of becoming. It is the most sophisticated piece of spatial narrative I have seen from an artist of any age." The inscription on the back of the piece, in Elsa's hand, in mirror script that only we can read without a mirror. For Grandma Ingrid, who showed me that north never moves. I keep the trophy on the kitchen table beside the compass. Elsa told me to. She said, "Keep it where you can see it when you take your bearing in the morning, Grandpa, so you remember that the map we draw together is the one that matters." 4 lessons this story has taught me. First, trust your instruments over your assumptions. A compass does not negotiate. If something reads wrong, it is wrong. Measure it. Confirm it. Act on it. Second, the people closest to you deserve the same verification you give to professional data. Love is not a reason to stop measuring. Love is the reason to measure more carefully. Third, a child will survive almost anything if they are given the tools to make meaning. Pencils, paper, a compass, a direction to point toward. Give a child north, and they will find their way out of any darkness. Fourth, it is never too late to open the door. Never. Even if 1,091 days have passed, even if you failed every single one of those days, the door is still there. Open it. If you are listening to this and something feels wrong in your family, if the calls seem too smooth, if the story seems too perfect, if your compass is spinning and you cannot explain why, do not wait. Do not assume. Do not trust the screen over your instincts. Measure it. A compass does not lie. North is north. And the truth does not hide forever beneath the frost. God bless you. God bless your family. And God bless every child who is still drawing compass roses on a wall in a room no one knows about, waiting for someone to finally measure what lies beneath the silence.